Hi, I'm Magdalena from InMotion. InMotion is a fully owned subsidiary by Jaguar Land Rover. We've been set up roughly 2 years ago to disrupt the kind of mobility space and looking beyond the car, but in the short term looking how we can improve the car ownership experience by creating services rather than products. So what am I going to talk about? This is a picture from New York in the 1900s, and my question is spot the car in that picture. Probably take some time because the picture is obviously not the best quality, but there it is. Henry Ford famously mentioned as well, if I asked consumers what they wanted, they would tell me they want a faster horse. Now looking 13 years later, the next slide is spot the horse. It doesn't. You can't find it. So what I'm trying to say is the car industry has been very similar over the last 50 years. What we are trying to do at InMotion is to understand the car industry will change over the next 10 years quicker than it did over the last 50 years, just because of consumer demands and market changes. So what affects it? First of all, the external environment. Looking at digital disruption, everybody has at least 1 or 2 iPhones in their pockets. Personal phone, business phone. People are used to having on-demand accessibility to certain services. Secondly, global connectivity. I can speak to anybody in the US whenever I want to because I just can. Everything is connected. All the services are connected. I go to the US, I can have the same service as I did in the UK. But also environmental pressures, CO2 emissions, all that kind of good stuff. But also changing consumer. So looking at the age of access, looking at the dependency on the smartphone, and most interestingly, the new luxury. So nowadays, consumers are willing to pay more, but not necessarily just for a better brand. They are willing to pay more for luxury, which is time and convenience. If you can save me removing my hassle, then I'll pay extra for that. And that is the kind of new luxury we are trying to see with consumers. So new space is being created. So rather than having just I'm taking the car now that I'm taking the bus, it's actually I'm moving from A to B and I may need both of those at the same time or different times. So how can we connect those different services to make the user journey experientially better than it currently is? How we are doing this? We've got the benefit of having access to the bigger corporate, i.e. Jaguar Land Rover, and being a smaller startup called InMotion, which means we have got access to a lot of resource and knowledge and experience from Jaguar Land Rover, but equally we can move quicker and more agile just because we are a smaller startup and we can maybe do things a little bit quicker and disrupt them. What I'm going to talk about, I'll ignore that slide for now, is trends. For me, trends are not necessarily about, I can predict the future. No one knows, right? I don't even know what I'm going to do next week. For me, trends are understanding what are consumers currently doing, where are the biggest pain points, and how can we act in order to remove and solve those pain points in the short term or potentially in the long term. So what we are focusing on is essentially understanding current user behavior and understanding how can we disrupt the existing infrastructure to improve it from a user perspective, because that's where disruption comes from. So the 4 kind of key trends we are seeing in the automotive space is communal commerce. We have spoken to so many customers who quite frankly don't know which car they want to buy, and the way they usually do it is speak to their friends and family members. Many customers set up WhatsApp groups to actually discuss with their mates what to buy. So for me, the whole trust element has completely shifted from I'm going to a dealership and I'm asking them for their advice to I'm asking my trusted network of friends and family members to tell me which car to buy in the future. Now what that means is, I think 15 years ago, a consumer went on average 7 times to a dealership. Nowadays, a consumer only goes once, because all of this information is being done already online or with my friends or mates or anywhere else apart from the dealership. The second thing is, which we discussed already, excessively private leasing market on the up. We know that consumers are willing to not own but actually just access vehicles and not necessarily having the desire to own that car afterwards. The 2 more important ones is shift from ownership to access. What it means is currently consumers feel owning a car is a hassle. Just because I've got insurance, I've got MOT, I've got servicing and maintenance. Something goes wrong, I need to contact somebody else. This whole journey for the consumer is disconnected. And what we are trying to see, or what we are currently seeing with consumers, is they have demand for a one-stop shop experience. So why do I need to go to several partners in order to make things happen? Why can't I just have this one experience of a subscription that allows me to remove all of that hassle? So second point is subscriptions are more popular. That's exactly the reason. Consumers are willing to not own stuff anymore, and I'm not talking just about cars, it's stuff in general. And the best examples, let me skip a few slides. So the best example is that one here, the iPhone upgrade program. Andrew spoke earlier about the iPhoneification. I would totally agree with that. It's definitely happening. Consumers don't want to own things anymore because there is no need, because they don't get the real value for money just because the new luxury has changed. But I would probably go a step further in the sense that's what Apple created last year. So nowadays, if I sign up to a mobile phone contract, I get an iPhone for 2 years. But actually, Apple is bringing out an iPhone every year. So for the consumer, it's a bit of a trade-off. I'm not happy about this because I would love to have the next iPhone next year. So what did iPhone do? They created a new subscription model, which is based on sign up for 2 years, but we guarantee that you get a new iPhone every year. So what that means is consumers are now getting used to the fact that they don't have to commit to a long-term period. They can now have things on demand whenever they want to because they desire to have it. What we've done is so who are the new consumers? For me, it's many millennials. Millennials are the kind of driving factor between the whole change that is currently happening. What we've done is what we're doing in we call it the lab. So we are experimenting, trialing new things with consumers, fake stuff, so fake or make it, and understand how consumers react to certain things. So what we've seen is we've done various landing pages for different propositions. And one was very kind of professional, so looking like a proper leasing website. The second one was a bit of a quirky, no kind of leasing language on there. And the third one was very commercially focused. What we've seen is that actually the millennial segment doesn't care about all the kind of fancy professional stuff. What they care about is something that is easily understandable in their language and is as flexible as the lifestyle. So all the sign-up rates that we're getting, whichever test we do, is the millennial segment is very willing to sign up to a completely new proposition without having necessarily the backup that we always had over the last 10 years around PCP, PCH. No one understands what that means nowadays. So the millennial segment, what I call them is generation rent. They are being used to not having to buy things anymore. Nowadays, if I want a minivan, I can hire it for a day for £30 a day. If I want to have a new dress, I can go on different websites and I can have a dress for a day for £8 rather than paying £100 for a Gucci dress. Or potentially a surfboard. I don't need to own stuff anymore. I can actually just have access whenever I want to on demand and whenever I need to. Spoke with that. So what we've done is I've got a few kind of customer quotes, but for me it's not necessarily picking individual examples. It's what we found is there are 3 different desires from consumers: emotional, aspirational, and functional. What we've seen is with leasing is consumers don't want to be stuck in the same brand for 3 years. They get bored because new cars come out constantly. The life cycle is changing even with cars for consumers. Customers don't want to be in the same brand for the next 3 years. Equally, functional desires could be, I just got pregnant, right? So what do I do? I need a bigger car, my baby's coming. What do? I can't get out of my lease. Well, I can, but actually it's a trade-off for me as a consumer. But there are also aspirational, emotional aspects around, I just fancy a new car, or I would love to have access to a slightly better car. So why do I have to drive the same car for 2 or 3 years? And if I want to have it for a shorter period of time, I need to pay accordingly. It works for the leasing company, but it doesn't work for the consumer. So what we are trying to see is the kind of what needs to change. I'm not trying to say we need to disrupt the entire leasing industry, because we can't. There are certain regulations we need to comply to, and we can't change it overnight, and we are fully aware of this. But the first thing is flexibility. What we found is 90% of consumers feel they are stuck in the wrong car after 1.5 years for whatever reason. And that could be stuff that I just mentioned. I just got pregnant, or I'm a contractor, I only have a contract for a year's time, or I just bought 2 dogs. And it's honestly, the breadth of this is huge, so you can't put your finger on it, why customers want to get out of it, because it doesn't matter. No one can pre-plan their lives for 3 years. So actually the flexibility aspect becomes very important. Transparency. What I've mentioned, we spoke to so many customers, and I can guarantee you that probably 90% of consumers don't understand the terminology. They're confused by PCH, PCPs. Some of them don't even know which deal they've got. They just know they sign up for 3 years, and they don't even know what's going to happen after 3 years with their car. They don't understand why they need to pay interest fees or admin fees or commission rates. It's all completely not transparent to those customers. But they sign up regardless of that. Why? Because there is absolutely no other choice to do it differently. They haven't got a choice. There is absolutely nothing out there, because this is it. Utilization, that's for me quite an interesting one. So currently it's you provide finance on an asset. What about if you could provide finance on a person? Which means you don't utilize one car with one person for 3 years, but you could actually utilize a vehicle with different people over 3 years. So that changes. I know that obviously there is operational complexity behind it, but actually what about if you think about it differently and understand how you could utilize a vehicle in various ways rather than just one consumer over a certain period of time? It changes everything, right, in terms of the risk, utilization, depreciation. And the last one is usability. So usability is create something that the consumer wants from a service design experience. It's understanding that I don't want to go to a dealer and I don't want to sign up 15 documents and sign my signature and do a credit check, which takes me forever. I don't want to go through that painful experience. I just want to go on a website and book it, and I want to have it. What we found through various experiments is the reason the customers signed up for a flexible kind of ownership program is because they wanted to have access to a car right now. They don't want to wait for another 3 or 4 weeks until the car is available or until the documents get signed off. They just need it now for whatever reason. And again, it's stuff like, I'm starting a new job on Monday and I haven't thought about it before because I just got the contract through. So they need things on demand and they want to access this whenever they want to. What we're doing, and I'm not trying to do a sales pitch here, but at InMotion what we're trying to develop is 3 concepts within the leasing space. And we're still looking for partners who would be willing to cooperate with us to experiment around this. The first one is the Spotify of car ownership. So imagine a future where actually I'm not signing up to a 3-year lease. I'm just signing up to Spotify for a car, which means I can switch it on and off whenever I want to, and I can swap the car whenever I want to as well. Yes, it comes with a lot of operational complexity, but you have no idea how much demand there is for that sort of proposition. And it doesn't mean that consumers will swap their cars on a monthly basis, but it's similar to your gym membership. You sign up, but you might go for the first year very often, but afterwards you don't really go. But it's just knowing that you have access to a gym membership if you wanted to. And the same with this proposition. Consumers may swap a little bit more at the beginning, but afterwards they keep the car for longer because they know they might swap if they wanted to, but they don't have to. But just giving them the opportunity to have it if they want it. Second one is the £0 car. What about if I could lease my car and share it with friends and family? So just like Airbnb, what about if I could put it on a platform that allows me to monetize the car that I'm currently leasing? Is it currently operationally doable? No, because no financial contracts allowed me to do so. But what about if we could create the new Airbnb of car ownership, which means I monetize my car, and that means that actually I don't pay a penny for that anymore, or maybe it means that I'm making money out of my vehicle because we know 96% of the time the car is just parking and doing absolutely nothing. So what about if I could utilize that time and make something better out of it? And the last one is a bit of issue there. So we've got the utilization reconstructed. What I was talking about earlier is what about if we redefine how we monetize that vehicle to the consumer. So rather than just leasing it, what about if we could use it in various ways? So we as InMotion would potentially own that car, but we could monetize it with a consumer for 3 months. We could then monetize it with a car sharing program for another 2 months, or maybe to rental, or maybe dealership as a test drive element. So actually, what about if that car now becomes slightly twisted around, we utilize it in various ways rather than actually just one person or one-on-one connecting things.
Brilliant.